Those Trentrudianos, or as they themselves would say, those psychic chemical results, which in general, in the presence of every three-centered being, form those sacred being data, which actualize in the common presences of the three-centered beings, one of the three holy forces of the sacred being Triyamazikamno. And this holy force in beings always becomes affirming towards all the denying properties already present in them. So, my boy, from that time when the mentioned definite notion had begun to exist, your favorites began leaving those already established conditions of being existence, on account of which the predisposition to the crystallization of the consequences of the properties of the organ Kundabuffer had become intense in their presences, and in which conditions, as the divine teacher Buddha supposed, the said endurance towards others' manifestations displeasing to oneself could alone crystallize in their common presences that partikdolk duty which in general is necessary for all three-centered beings. And so, for the purpose of this famous suffering of theirs, many of the three-centered beings of that planet of yours, either singly or in groups, that is to say, with others who thought as they did, began from then on to go away from amongst beings similar to themselves. They even organized special colonies for this purpose, where, although existing together, they nevertheless arranged everything so as to produce this endurance of theirs in solitude. It was just then that their famous what are called monasteries came into existence, which exist down to the present time, and in which, as it were, certain of your contemporary favorites, as they say, save their souls. When I first visited that Pearl Land, most of the three-brained beings there, as I've already said, were followers of that same religion which was based, as it were, on the exact counsels and indications of Saint Buddha himself. And the faith of every one of these beings in this religion was unshakably firm. At the outset of my investigations into the doctrinal subtleties of that religion there, I had as yet come to no definite decision how exactly to utilize it to attain my aim. But when, in the course of my investigations, I clarified one very definite comprehension, proper to all the followers of that religion, which arose there again owing to a misunderstanding, from the words that had indeed been spoken by Saint Buddha himself, I then at once decided how just to act there through this peculiar Havat Varnoni, or religion of theirs. It transpired that in his explanations to them about cosmic truths, Saint Buddha had, among other things, told them also that in general, the three-centered beings existing on various planets of our great universe, and of course the three-centered beings of the earth also, were nothing else but part of that most great greatness, which is the all-embracing of all that exists, and that the foundation of this most great greatness is there above, for the convenience of the embracing of the essence of everything existing. This most great foundation of the all-embracing of everything that exists constantly emanates throughout the whole of the universe and coats itself from its particles upon planets in certain three-centered beings who attain in their common presences the capacity to have their own functioning of both fundamental cosmic laws of the sacred Heptaparaparshanok and the sacred Triyamazikamno into a definite unit in which alone objective divine reason acquires the possibility of becoming concentrated and fixed. And this has been foreseen and created in this manner by our common Creator, in order that when these certain parts of the great all-embracing, already spiritualized by divine reason, return and reblend with the great prime source of the all-embracing, they should compose that whole, which, in the hopes of our common endless unibeing, may actualize the sense and the striving of all that exists in the whole of the universe. Further, it seems Saint Buddha also told them, "You, three-centered beings of the planet Earth, having the possibility of acquiring in yourselves both chief fundamental universal sacred laws, have the full possibility also of coating yourselves with this most sacred part of the great all-embracing of everything existing and of perfecting it by the required divine reason. And this great all-embracing of all that is embraced is called holy prana." This quite definite explanation of Saint Buddha was well understood by his contemporaries, and many of them began, as I've already said, to strive with eagerness, first to absorb and to coat in their presences the particle of this most great greatness, and afterwards to make inherent to it divine objective reason. But when the second and third generations of the contemporaries of Saint Buddha began wiseacring with his explanations of cosmic truths, they just wiseacred with their peculiar reason and fixed, for its transmission, a very definite notion to the effect that the same Mr. Prana already begins to be in them immediately upon their arising. Thanks to this misunderstanding, the beings of that period, and of all subsequent generations, including the contemporary, have imagined and still imagine that without any being particular duty, they are already parts of that most great greatness, which Saint Buddha himself had personally very definitely explained. So, my boy, as soon as I had made this misunderstanding clear to myself, and had clearly constated that the beings of that country Pearl Land were all, without exception, convinced that they were already particles of Mr. Prana himself, I then at once decided to use this misunderstanding, and there also to attain my aim through that religion of theirs. Before saying more about this, it must without fail be noticed that concerning these same explanation of Saint Buddha's, namely, that he had supposedly said that beings already have in themselves at their arising a particle of the most great greatness, my personal detailed investigations quite clearly showed me that he never could possibly have said just that. And he could not have said it because, as the same detailed investigations of mine have cleared up to me, when Saint Buddha once happened to be among his devoted disciples in the locality Senku Ori, he definitely said, "If this most sacred prana is crystallized in you, consciously or unconsciously, on the part of your I, you must, without fail, bring the perfecting of the individual reason of the totality of its most holy atoms to the required gradations. Otherwise, this most holy coating will, changing various exterior coatings, suffer and languish eternally." Here it is interesting to notice that concerning this they were warned by still another saint individual, also a genuine messenger from above, namely the Saint Gurdjieff. And this saint and genuine messenger gave this warning to them in the following words: "Blessed is he that hath a soul. Blessed also is he that hath none, but grief and sorrow are to him that hath in himself its conception." So, my boy, when I made this clear to myself there,